Number 5, Masters of Earth. Where do I even begin with Masters of Earth? Well, let's start off by saying it's my favorite Dalek story that Big Finish have produced so far. Let me tell you, if you really like the Hartnell Dalek stories, this is one that does not disappoint. It's set before the events in the Dalek invasion of Earth, but still during the initial occupation, and that makes everything all the more dangerous for the Doctor and Perry. The Doctor can't interfere too much or else he might fuck up the future, which is also his past. It's also a very dystopian story, as you can imagine, and the Doctor and Perry spend most of it as fugitives on the run, so landscapes change a lot. There's also a subplot that is really tasking on the Doctor and Perry's relationship, which is just oozing with great development for this post-Mind Warp version of Perry. The Daleks are written as they are at their most brutal, too. If I remember correctly, there aren't a lot of people who cross paths with the Doctor and Perry that make it out alive at the end. It's pretty much everything you could want from a Dalek invasion story. Number 4. Scherzo, however you pronounce it. This is another one of those ones that I like a lot because it clicked with a feeling I was feeling when I listened to it. It also helps that it's really well written. This is the Shearman story that people tend to say is the weakest, but I'd argue it's the strongest. You see, this story comes off a whole big grand finale to a big grand story arc that spans across about 11 stories and has to deal with how fucked up our main characters are after coming out of what was actually a really traumatic experience for them. And it does that brilliantly. The Doctor's at his lowest in this story, and Charlie has a hard time adjusting to this angrier version of the man she loves. Yeah, that also comes up too. Charlie and the Doctor loving each other, and the story is really just them working out their issues with each other. The ending isn't exactly happy either. I wouldn't even call it bittersweet. It's just one of acceptance. Acceptance of how things are going to be from this point on in their relationship. One door closes for Charlie and another opens, and the same happens to the Doctor. At the end, they're still the best of friends, but they just acknowledge that things will never be the same. It's a character piece, if you couldn't tell already, focusing specifically on the Doctor and Charlie. In fact, Paul McGann and India Fisher are the only two actors in it, and it's probably one of my favorite performances each of them has given. The sound design is also pitch perfect from a sound editor's perspective, but back to the wanking of the story itself. I just really love that theme of acceptance and moving forward. I'd recommend this anyways, but if you're going through tough times or events that are going to change your life and you need something to help console you, this is the one to get, man. It'll be an emotional ride, but if you're like me, it'll help out a lot. Number 3, Trial of the Valeyard. Trial of the Valeyard is pretty much everything I wanted in a sequel to Trial of a Time Lord. It's one of those stories that's legitimately a dream episode come true. The story offers a backstory for the Valeyard while also keeping his origins completely mysterious, which is exactly what I wanted. Of course it does describe the Time Lords doing shady, cruel, illegal things. However, most of the characters come to the conclusion that the backstory was false, and just part of the Valeyard's plan. Exactly how much of it is a lie, though, is left up to the listener as the Doctor makes mention of the fact that there is a grain of truth to it, and personally I wouldn't put it past the Time Lords to do all the things that are described here. This fan wank combined with a production oozing with outstanding performances and neat plot thread tie-ups, it's just a fantastic one, and there's a reason almost anyone who listens to it falls in love with it. Make sure you've seen Trial of a Time Lord before you listen to it, though. Otherwise, you'll be completely lost. 2. Medicinal Purposes. While not a perfect story, I really love it anyways. For one, I love the setting of the story. For another, I love how all the characters just bounce off each other. But the thing that makes this story for me is David Tennant's, yes, that David Tennant, is David Tennant's fantastic, outstanding performance as Daft Jamie. The writing and performance behind the character of Daft Jamie is so fucking tragic. I'm by no means a Tennant fanboy, but I just love him in this, and I want to give Daft Jamie a big hug. His chemistry with Colin Baker is easily one of the most enjoyable interactions I've heard between the Doctor and a one-off character ever. And by the end, because of this excellent performance, you can't help but feel just as hollow and empty on the inside as the Doctor and Evelyn do as they watch Jamie walk into the mist of a painful, undeserved death. It's gut-wrenching, and I love it. God, Big Finish really does have a BDSM relationship with their listeners, don't they? Please, emotionally traumatize me, Big Finish. Please, ah! Before we get to number 1, I'm going to list off some honorable mentions. Of course, it should be said The Chimes of Midnight, Thicker Than Water, Something Inside, Catch 1782, and The Peterloo Massacre. Number 1, drum roll please. Night Thoughts. Honestly, you should have seen this coming from the get-go if you know me. Where do I even begin with this one? It's the only Doctor Who story that's managed to really scare my socks off in my teenage years. It's oozing with atmosphere and is actually a very rewarding audio to listen to. People die in this, like, a lot. It's really fucking dark. This story deals with shit like euthanasia that actually turns out to be accidental murder, the guilt following, suicide, and the effects of sort of but also not sort of time travel on corpses. And people have their eyes cut out while they're wide awake and helpless, children with abandonment issues, a mystery which remains unsolved, and a monster which remains unbeaten. Only the TARDIS crew and 2 people out of like 6 or 7 more survive, and the Doctor doesn't really do anything to alter the situation, which is another interesting thing. Up until now, all the stories Hex has been in, the Doctor's been in control of the situation in some way. He knows what he's doing. He's playing chess. Here he comes out just as bewildered as his companions, and that's what makes the story truly frightening. The Doctor has no power here for once. He doesn't have any answers, only 3 very loose theories that, when actually thought about, can't be the solution. Speaking of the Doctor, Sylvester McCoy really delivers here. Like, he has monologues here which probably win for his creepiest. I will never get the image of McCoy smiling almost demonically as he talks about the corpse of a bear being tossed around to make it look like it's dancing out of my goddamn head now. Jig, jig, jig indeed, you creepy fuck. But yeah, this story embodies everything I love about Big Finish. It isn't afraid to push the boundary. It isn't afraid to go places the TV show would never go. It toys with your emotions, keeps you thinking and on your toes, and raises a lot of philosophical and moral questions. And it's turned its creep factor up to 11. That's why it's my favorite Big Finish audio, and my second favorite Doctor Who story of all time. Because it's the only one that makes me want to hide behind the sofa.